Going live. Hello, and welcome to another Do As We Do Live, where we're on a mission to break that chain of the unprepared caregiver cycle by starting the conversation early with uh, your family and those around you, because getting educated is the way to prepare. Um, and I am that Kimberly, or as my mama calls me, Kimberly. And we're here to bring you another informative live with today's guest who's been on our show a couple times. So let me go ahead and close some windows since I am doing this broadcast by myself today. Our volunteers are all hard at work on their day jobs. So um, before we jump into who we're speaking with, before I introduce Tracey Lawrence, the author of Dementia Sucks and founder of Grandfamily Planning, I want to mention that we are live on the Do As We Do Facebook and the Do As We Do YouTube channel. LinkedIn is having a little bit of a glitch, so you can catch all the replays on Facebook and YouTube, and I'll put the link in the actual comments here shortly. But either way, I do thank you for joining us today. Our goal is to bring you value every time we're on. So if you have a question, please leave it in the comments. Tracey or myself will get back to you. We'll even post it live and try and get it answered while we're on the show. And while you're here, please hit that subscribe or that like button wherever you're watching from. So that way you can get valuable updates on when we go live, as well as when we have exciting news to share. And last but not least, if you do know a caregiver in need and you find value in the show or Do As We Do, please share this with them. We all know that in these times, it's definitely something that is valuable to have, is knowledge and education. So just a little quick reminder about our definition of who and what a caregiver is, and that is someone who regularly assists a loved one, like myself. I assist my mom, and like our guest will share with you here shortly, who she assisted while we all work our full-time jobs and or juggle our lives and our family. So that is a caregiver. There are over 46 million plus, probably even more now, because I know that stat is old, people that are providing care for loved ones across the United States. And the problem is a lot of them are untrained, unprepared, unpaid, and very uncertain because they're definitely just thrusted into this position. So this phase may also have come about unexpectedly because of a stroke or heart attack, and that person that they love can no longer care for themselves, or they're diagnosed, like my mom was, with early onset dementia, and you just automatically become that caregiver. So that's our definition. We want people to understand and remember that. And that is why we launched Do As We Do Foundation, this 501(c) nonprofit, to help caregivers, because we believe that both the caregivers and their loved ones both deserve to live happily, or live a happy life, I should say, and that they should be prepared, that they should be helped, they do need assistance, because it we all need assistance getting into this world, and we're all going to need assistance getting out. So we provide valuable content and guidance to help the future caregivers become prepared. We build a support community and to empower current caregivers to find resources, as well as we are growing a fund to provide financial assistance to the caregivers in need. We are in this for the long game. Every day since 2011, 10,000 people turn 65. I heard that on a Ways and Means Committee um, uh, hearing back in 2019. And it's definitely scary that we all know that we're not prepared for this boom. So without further ado, um, I am very excited to welcome to our show today our guest, Tracey Lawrence. Hi,
Hey,
Tracey.
Hey, Kimberly, how are you?
Not the country and western singer, but
No. No, I sing better than he does.
however, a very fun and entertaining Tracey Lawrence either way. So I do appreciate you for joining us, Tracey, today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Kimberly. I'm a big fan of yours. So and we always have fun when we get together because
Yes.
we look at this situation with very like minds. So
Yes,
it's always a
definitely.
pleasure.
Absolutely. And with smiling hearts, because we know that's the only way that you can get through it, despite the bad days, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
so give the audience a little background on yourself, just high level, before we jump into your story.
Oh, sure. Well, I was a graphic artist until my folks got sick. My dad went first. In 2003, I was living in northern New Jersey with my husband, living my happy life. And I realized that my father was doing a really good job of hiding the fact that he was much sicker than we realized, and had to jump in and help take care of him. While my mom was in a great deal of denial about what the situation was, and she was actually angry at him for abandoning her. Uh, and it was my introduction to caregiving and what it was all about, and what I
How old
needed
were
to
you
know.
at that time in 2003?
2003 would
Yeah.
make me, oh, good Lord, 45.
Okay, so in your 40s.
Yes, I was
Okay.
in my 40s.
Yeah. Okay.
My dad was 75, and I thought he was doing fine, and he pretended to be fine on the phone. My dad, I talked to him on the phone every week, at least, sometimes more often. And he made like everything was great. And then we went down to see him, and clearly things were not so great. So, and then he had a major health crisis, which he was teetering, and then he went over. And so, when he developed full-blown vascular dementia, where his short-term memory completely evaporated, and it was so heartbreaking and unexpected. And I was fortunate because my parents did a lot of smart things before they got sick. But it was
and did they talk to you about those smart things?
Oh, of course not.
Okay.
Not until they absolutely had to. Not until, I remember my mother handing me this envelope, a big, envelope. And she said, here, you take a look at this. And I opened it up, and it's like long-term care insurance. And I'm like, what the hell is this? I didn't know, but thank God they had it, because the benefits were much more helpful than I could ever have imagined.
Yeah.
And that was really big. And my father got sick and died in about a year. Whereas, he was so miserable. He didn't want to live. And we didn't do anything to help extend his life, because we knew that would have been cruel.
Yeah. And your mom, what about your mom?
My mom was okay. She had some conditions. I mean, she had type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, the usual. But mentally, she was doing okay. And she, after my father passed away, went back to independent living in Florida for a couple of years. But my husband and I were always, checking on her and making sure she was okay. Yeah. We never took vacations anywhere except Florida. After that, it was just like always Florida, because, needed to check on mom. And then things started to happen. She had a heart attack in 2006, which she reported to me over the phone, and did not want to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
Gave me a hard time, wanted to go down to the pool and go swimming. But I forced her to go, and the doctor confirmed that, yes, indeed, she had a heart attack. She went to the hospital, which was, of course, my fault. And and she got a couple of stents, but then she was back in business.
Yeah.
And a few years later, she needed to have her gallbladder seen too. So I brought her up here. She stayed with us for a while I got that taken care of. She went back to Florida. And at that point, I hired somebody to be her personal assistant, which
I call my mom's her super adult supervisor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was better than what my mother described her as. I don't need a stinking babysitter. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So, so you learn to reframe these things so that they are
Yes.
more well tolerated.
Yes, for sure.
So she was, and she actually really like started to enjoy having this person
Hmm.
because this person drove and took her
Yeah.
places and helped her with her shopping and took her to movies, and
Yeah.
she actually had a social life again.
Yeah.
But then that fell apart, and she was not doing well without that person.
Hmm.
And I finally said, Mom, your
Yeah.
situation sucks. So here's what I'm proposing. Come live with
Yeah.
Bob and me in New Jersey, and we will help you. And
Yeah.
that's where the real hands-on, upfront, close and
Day to
personal
day.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a big eye opener, and it was
Yeah.
also that what drove me to write my book.
Uh-huh. Yeah. To share your experience, because people don't realize that it's it is something that you're thrust into. The generations, I feel like our generation, it's a generational thing. You're just whether they prepared or not. My uncle said about my dad and him, you and your niece, you and your cousin need to get over that me and your dad are just going to die one of these days, right? And I was like, yeah, but you could at least give us a little insight on stuff, right? Like you could at least prepare and things of that sort, because nobody expects to get a heart attack or stroke or even get diagnosed with anything and then they can't care for themselves or get early onset dementia. So
Right.
I feel like the older generations they didn't want to have that conversation, and now that's the reason why I started beating the drum of let's talk to those that 18 to 30, 40 something before they even get there, right? Those that are coming up, because they can live a happier life, with
And
your book, sharing your secrets, not secrets, but sharing your knowledge, because it's no secret. It's like those that I found that you asked were always willing to tell you, but a lot of people shy away from wanting. They always say, "Oh, I'm sorry." No, don't be sorry. Listen to my story, because it could be yours in 2 years, right?
exactly, or tomorrow, it
Yeah,
may be happening already. You don't know.
good point. Absolutely.
Dementia is very sneaky,
Yeah.
and
What?
it takes a lot of different forms.
Yeah. What surprised you about being a caregiver when you were thrust into when your mom came to live with you?
Mm, yeah, that's the really interesting thing is that she was the same person that drove me completely nuts when I was a teenager.
I agree. I agree.
But
But in a loving nutsy way, right? Like in a loving.
yes, but here's the
Caveat.
twist.
Yeah.
Um, when somebody gets to that point, they love you and they're
Hmm.
proud of you and they
Hmm.
feel good that they helped you to become the independent person that you are.
Yeah.
But there's part of them that resents that.
Mm.
And that's the thing that really, puts a spin on the whole situation that's so unexpected, because you'll be going along, right?
Hmm.
And everybody's, all lovey-dovey and everything's wonderful.
Hmm.
But then, something happens where they feel like they're out of control. And
Yeah.
so what do they do to regain control? They control
Yeah.
you because they
Yeah. Or they
can.
rebel. Yeah, they rebel. Yeah, they definitely rebel.
Yeah. So, and they know where all your buttons are because they installed them.
Mm.
So they'll start pushing.
Yeah.
And if you have the desired reaction, then
Hmm.
suddenly the illusion that they're in control is restored, and it makes them feel better for about 5 seconds until they realize how freaking nasty they just were to you. So,
I like to think that. Well, I feel like that is the case between my mom and her mom, but because my mom and I got along so well, even when I was younger, and and she's used to me being away. Right now she came to live, she's come to live with us, and right now we're just talking about it being a vacation, and that makes her
right.
feel good. She has her dogs, it makes her feel independent. um However, there are things that the minute that she tells me to, like, just a second ago, she didn't like my ripped jeans and she said that I shouldn't go out in public like this, right? And I didn't argue with her, right? Because it's her reality, and she was always very strict about what I wore when I was young. She
Hmm.
always wanted me to look professional and nice. She wanted my hair to be combed, and brush my teeth, and presentable. She's
Sure.
always been that mother. So
Sure.
I have to go back to remembering that before I respond in a way that's going to continue down a negative path, right? Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
how did you overcome those moments when, you wanted to say something, but you just bit your tongue,
Yeah, you learn to breathe.
Okay. Yeah.
You always take a beat. You learn not to react.
Yes.
Because that's the only thing you can control. You don't
Mm,
know what they're going to present you with on any given day. After a while, you
yeah.
start to realize when dementia is part of the picture, you never know who you're going to wake up to.
Yes. Every day is a new day.
Yeah, and they could be a different person multiple times in the same day, depending on what kind of dementia they have, and where their minds are taking them.
Yeah.
So you have to be ready to really think on your feet
Hmm.
and not react to things that they say, because a lot of what they're saying is not connected to you.
Yeah.
It's connected to what's going on between their ears.
Yeah. I would agree. Yeah, for sure. It definitely is something that you kind of have to redirect and/or understand it's their perspective. It's
Yes.
a generational perspective, and there's nothing wrong with them having their own opinions, whether it's real or not, and
Yes. Yes. And one of my favorite expressions is don't correct, redirect.
yes.
So, they may get to a point where they forget, like, my mother would forget that my father was dead. In
Hmm.
fact, there were times when she reconstituted him.
Mm,
She was sure that he was still around,
yeah.
or a version of him was still around.
Yeah.
And for me to, like, say to her, wait a minute, in the beginning, I would remind her that daddy was gone.
Uh-huh.
But then, you get to a point where you just kind of, you go with it. You meet them where they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
And rather than get her all upset saying something that's, to make her relive the pain of losing him all over again,
Hmm.
and it wouldn't stick anyway. So let's just go with it.
Yeah.
So tell me about this husband of yours.
Yeah.
What's his name? How come I've never met him?
Yeah.
When was the wedding? So it was just, and be playful about it. And in my mother's case, I could, because sense of humor is a very key component of our family dynamic.
Yeah. Mine too. My mom, for sure. Yeah. I redirect to her dogs all the time. Because we say that those are her favorite children. My brother and I both, um, we always say, meet Millie and Boots. These are my mother's favorite children, right? Like, we're even though, my brother's taking care of, and my sister-in-law and my brother are taking care of our 92-year-old grandmother, or 93, and I have my mom, and so it definitely is something that we redirect back to her animals, because that makes her happy. That gets her in a good mood, and we can
Yep.
move on from any kind of like fighting, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not worth that argument. So
No, it certainly isn't. It's when you're never going to win.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
you win by redirecting
Yes.
and getting their mood to readjust. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I shared in the beginning a stat that just really overwhelmed me when I heard it back in 2019, was, that since 2011, every single day, 10,000 people turn 65.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Joanne Lynn shared that stat in a Ways and Means committee that I was happened to be watching on
Yep.
C-SPAN on elder care. So, what would you recommend that all of us do, first, as it relates to becoming, or even before we become a caregiver, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
what what would you recommend?
Well, first of all, incidentally, that trend is going to
Mhm.
continue through 2030.
Oh yeah.
So we got another 10 years to go.
Hmm.
So they're going to be
Boom.
there are going to be boatloads of old people. me among them, I mean,
Yeah.
that's my generation.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and we have to, first of all, we got to grow up.
Hmm.
Okay. We have to acknowledge that this is happening.
Yeah.
We have to stop trafficking in denial that,
Hmm.
that something bad is going to happen to people we love, because that's
Hmm.
just the human
The way. Yeah.
condition.
Yeah.
We are vulnerable. We are frail. Stuff happens, especially now, with COVID being
Hmm.
foremost in so many people's minds. A lot of people who were perfectly capable and independent last year
Hmm.
are now frightened,
Yeah.
vulnerable, afraid, more dependent on their adult
Children.
children.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%.
So I think it's important to start introducing the idea that that not only not going to live forever, to your point, dying is one thing, but
Yeah.
living with a long-term illness
It's
is
something else.
very, very difficult and
Yeah. For sure.
expensive, not just from a financial standpoint, but from an emotional standpoint.
Absolutely. And when your children don't know what to do, you're making them make these painstaking, decisions that just immobilize people,
Right.
because you're overwhelmed with, like, am I going to do the, when my during COVID, I had to make the decision whether or not my mom had spine surgery, right? And
Mm,
and once I finally got to talk to the right doctor, she's like, absolutely don't, because she won't recover properly. So I didn't do it. But like for 2 months, I had, opinions, ears, everything, family,
yep.
whatever. What are we going to do? And I'm the one that has to make that decision, right? And it was hard. So
Absolutely. And
when,
your mom well.
mhm, yeah,
You have a
absolutely.
really good idea of what she would have said,
Hmm.
in a time when she was more capable, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But even with that knowledge, I mean, I had the same thing with my mom. There
yeah.
was a time when she went from hospital to rehab,
Hmm.
and I was at the rehab, and I hated the rehab that she was at. I didn't like
Hmm.
the way she was being treated, and
Hmm.
I was alarmed by her condition. And I asked the people at rehab, was she released from the hospital too soon? And they said, well, that's up to you. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, she's DNR. If we send her back to the hospital, that's your decision, but you know that they're going to do everything in their power to keep her alive as long as possible if you do that.
Hmm.
And now I'm like,
Yeah.
I thought I knew. And now
Hmm.
I'm like, so, I mean, obviously, I found my way through to a solution that I felt more comfortable with. But my point is that you need to have all the tools you can possibly gather
Hmm.
to make sure that you make the best possible decision so you can sleep at night and
Yeah,
your loved one is getting the right care.
absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
And the way that you do that is to have a conversation with them while they are still
Hmm.
competent and able to participate.
Absolutely.
You know,
And yeah, and that they're like, that they can see, like, that way you have all the documents in place, or you have, even if it's a simple, even if you don't go get a POA, which I recommend people doing early,
oh
but
yeah,
even if you don't get a POA, for medical, so that you can be involved in just knowing what, not making the decisions for them, finding out what the difference is in on all of them, and then getting one so that you can be told what's going on, but also so that you can show them, here's a, here's the list of everything you told me you wanted me to help you with, or the,
right.
here's something of our conversation. I'm sure the Gen Z's and all the generations after us are going to record a video, right, to be able to remind their parents. But it takes that reminding,
Yep, yep,
so that they get it, right.
yep. And also there's another aspect. There's something called an advanced directive,
Mm-hmm.
where
Good, good
a
point.
living will, where
Yeah.
your parent actually says, under these conditions, this is what I would want to see
X, Y, and
happen.
Z. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's an ugly document, I'll be
Yeah.
honest with you.
But
You
still,
start
yeah.
excuse me, but here's the thing. You don't want to just have the document, you want to have the conversation.
Yes.
You want to know what your
Conversation.
loved one's deal breakers are.
Absolutely. 100%.
So
Otherwise, what are you going to do when I tell people like, here, first I got to say, thank you, Diana, for joining us. I tell people with young children, especially, or teenagers, now's the time to be even, planting that seed to them. Hey, if this happens, do this, or talk to this person, or look here, or whatever it
yep.
is. My niece and my nephew are in their 20s. I have some nieces, or I have some nephews and nieces later in their, like, almost in their 30s. Like, have those conversations. Now you're to the point where you need to tell someone else, like, hey, if this happens to me, this is what I want, because
Yes.
otherwise, what are you going to do, right? Because it's not about if you die, but it's about if you, life insurance. What did you say to me earlier? Life insurance is, you had a saying about life insurance. Now I can't remember it.
Oh.
It
Which
well,
what
when
the
people
long
always
term?
say, yeah, they always say, oh, I got life insurance, and we're like, well, life insurance is for when you're dead, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's
but you want to have the kind of insurance that protects you while you're still alive.
correct,
You
absolutely.
don't want to be worth more dead than alive.
Yes, absolutely, 100%,
Yeah, and they aren't
100%.
all that way. So you
Yeah,
really, you need to talk to a professional and get the right kind of product.
yeah, for
So,
sure.
yeah.
So talk about a little bit, just for the sake of time. Talk about what led you down the path of training companies, and how to help employees that are caregivers, right? And
Oh,
maybe
yes.
touch a little bit about your dementia sucks book.
Yes. So, Kimberly, I've been working with families for a long time now, and one of the things I
Hmm.
know about humans is that we like to deny that there's a problem until there's a crisis, and then we can't deny anymore, right? But we will
Yes.
procrastinate up until the moment. So,
The,
I
yeah.
wanted to find a way to reach these adult children before there's a crisis.
Hmm.
And most people who are in that position are employees.
Hmm.
And so I have been reaching out to employers of employee companies that have more than 100 employees, and
Hmm.
helping to put together programs that show these people how to utilize their benefits intelligently,
Yeah.
and what to do if there's a crisis, so
Yeah.
that they won't be caught blindsided, and so that they'll
Hmm.
have the documentation that they need, so that they
Yeah.
will be appointed their parents power of attorney, healthcare proxy, all that stuff.
Yeah. For
So,
sure.
and for employers who understand the value of their employees, and
Hmm.
how helpful this information can be to those people.
Absolutely.
I am putting the word out.
Yeah.
Contact me and let me put together a program for you and the people who work for you.
Absolutely.
It enhances productivity, um,
100%. Yeah.
and it makes life better for everybody. So
Absolutely. And they don't they the enhancement of productivity level, the stress level that they will, that they can relieve from them, even if it's just a little bit, knowing that there are tools at work that they can rely on. Because when you're thrust into becoming a caregiver, yes, you go to Google, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to find all the right things, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get what you need. And if you have a source that you trust, at your employer, then that, why wouldn't you? That's an amazing service, to your
thank you.
employees. um, just like daycare was to, back in the day before they had daycares at big corporations, right? Like, I don't
Right.
mean to compare it, but I do, because I tell people all the time, it's like having a child. I didn't have any children. My mother is now my child. My boyfriend and I moved in together. He's got 2 kids, and I'm like, hey, and I got my mom, right? Like, she's going everywhere I go, and if you don't like it, so too bad, so sad, right? I mean, it, you need help getting into the world, and you also need help getting out. So
That's
it's
absolutely true.
it is something that that's a great service that companies need to be adding to, their package plans, so that their employees are taken care of, because there's so many millennials that are in that sandwich generation. I don't 25% of them, they said, were like, the stat back that I read a year and a half, 2 years ago, said 25% probably has gone up. Are
No
25% of
doubt.
caregivers are millennials and women. And then I don't even know what the number for the sandwich generation is anymore. But point being is, there's a need, because you said until 2030 that all the boomers are going to just keep on booming, right?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
it's nuts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we got to be prepared, and we got to have that if you can't be prepared, then have the conversation, at
Yes.
least,
Yes. Yes.
and you give some great examples. On I did register. I know I kind of I'm skipping now. I'm gonna let you come back to the book, but I did register for your workshop about work with me,
Fantastic.
ma. How do you get to your stubborn parents to cooperate? In 2 days. I'm excited. What can we expect from that little
Yeah, well,
seminar?
it's going to be focused on people who are at that beginning point, so
Okay.
that they understand, what they need to talk about, why their parents are pushing back,
Hmm.
because it's really shocking, how most parents react at the very
Yeah.
beginning,
Yeah.
and how to actually turn that around so that they can have a productive conversation and get their parents to at least
Yeah.
get them primed for action.
Absolutely.
And if you can't get them to act, at least know what you're going towards,
Hmm.
and what tools you can use to move forward.
Absolutely.
So, and I'm excited. This is going to be the first one of these webinars that I'm going to be doing. So,
Oh, I'm
um,
excited too.
yeah, and
It is.
yeah, sorry.
It's a need, and the more people are talking about it, the more we're shaking the trees, and beating that drum of, hey, you need, we need to be talking about this. It's not going away. It's
Hmm.
only, continuing. It's important. So
Yes, and to
good.
your point about Googling, I often say that caregiving is something you can't Google your way out of. Well, the thing is, most people don't even know the terminology.
Yeah.
A lot of people who are caregivers, you read the definition before, and you're spot on. But most people don't recognize that they're caregiving when they're caregiving.
Uh-huh.
So, in fact, I started two groups, one on Facebook and one on LinkedIn. One is called the Good Kids Club,
Uh-huh.
because a lot of people, when they're first getting started with caregiving, don't think of themselves as being caregivers. They think of themselves as being a good kid
Yeah.
to their parent.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And yeah, and on LinkedIn, it's called Good Kids with Careers.
Okay. Well, I'm
So
going to throw up your Facebook and your Instagram and your LinkedIn, but you could, if they search your name, you're going to come up and on everything. So
right,
for sure, they definitely
right.
need to connect to those groups, because that that is something that you are the more support you have, the better you are.
Absolutely.
Because what I found, even though my friends are very supportive, my family is supportive, there's just sometimes you want an outside perspective, right? Some people that I read in there don't have anybody else but that group. I feel very fortunate that I do have great friends and family to you included, that you can just reach out and say, well, what do you think? What's your opinion? Or to my boyfriend, where I just need a hug for the day, right? Like, not everybody has that. So if they're part of a group like what you're doing, then they definitely will have that support, which I would love to, like, when we for do as we do, that's connecting those resources on top of raising money to give to caregivers that are in need, that because those caregivers don't get paid. They're doing it because they're a good kid, right? And a good caregiver, and they're just doing what they were taught. And that's hard sometimes, because they're also trying to live their lives at the same time.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I can't imagine. I don't have kids myself, but I
Hmm.
can't imagine, being trying to, conduct business, take care of your loved ones. You got your kids at home on erratic
Hmm.
schedules. They may or may not be going to school. They may or may not be learning at home. It's, we've got all these new impediments to being
Hmm.
able to, live a full and happy
Yeah.
life. And then we've got people, older people in facilities,
Hmm.
and their loved ones can't visit them.
Yeah.
That's a horror show.
It is. And caregiving kills the caregiver. And after COVID, it has dramatically impacted everyone, right?
For
Those that are in
sure.
the nursing home that can't go see, that can't even get and see their loved ones, on top of that caregiver who feels that guilt that they can't get to their loved ones. So
And guilt is awful. Guilt
yeah,
is something that every caregiver should just eliminate from their lives. I
yeah,
say, if you're taking care of another person, you
hmm
get a get out of jail free card for guilt. Just don't do it. It's a
yeah,
waste of time and energy. You're doing the best you can.
let it go
There
for
you
sure.
go.
Yeah,
Yep.
let it go and give it to whatever higher power you believe in. I say
Yep.
let it go, let God, and because it is something that you can't control for sure. So
That's right.
well, that is a good. I definitely included your dementia sucks link, Amazon, in the YouTube. Yes, so you can quickly, yes, that show that book. So people should definitely get it. There's lots of great information in it.
It's also a
And
fun story. It's
yes,
not, it's not all doom and gloom. There's a lot
yeah,
of
humor is
humor.
definitely on your side in this, so for sure.
Thank
But
you.
they can also follow you, like you said, on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Do you have any closing remarks while we? Whoop, here, my headphones. Sorry.
Oh no.
Oh
um,
no.
well, I just want to say that look, there's this is a difficult challenge, and caregiving is a lot more dangerous than people understand that it is.
Mhm.
So ask for help. And what you're doing with your organization, Kimberly, is just so fabulous. I can't thank you enough for taking this on. It's a beautiful thing. And if anybody needs help, please reach out to me. You can and you can also go to my website. If you
Mhm.
can't remember anything else, I have the URL dementiasucks.com.
Yes.
So, and it links to
Easy.
all my other stuff. So
Smart.
feel free to reach out to me through that.
Okay.
You can contact me. I offer people an hour of my time on the phone
Mhm.
for a consult if they really need it. And
Yeah.
I'm here to help. So use the resources. We're
Yeah, definitely. 100%. I hope you're recording all those so that way you can share those at a later time, for those who might not have catched it, or caught
yes.
it, I should say,
Oh yes.
in the beginning, because it is definitely something in today's technology, to save all that. If you can imagine, if you could have been recording your mom on Instagram or Facebook, how much fun that would have been when she was telling you to
I
telling you something that you may or may not agree with.
Yeah, well, writing it down while it was happening
Yeah,
was definitely a
how
good
you
way
did
to
it.
go.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
so and she was really entertaining. I got to say, I
yeah,
had no idea how creative my mom was until she lost her mind.
yeah. Well,
So
it happens, right?
yeah, it absolutely does. But
So
fortunately, she was fun in
yeah,
a lot of the time, and I like to say that I miss many versions of my mother.
yeah. Me too. I agree with you. That's a great statement. I know
Thank
that
you.
that's going to come. I see the all the good ones right now, and I hope I continue to all see those versions and not any of the other ones. But I am optimistic, right? And but at the same time, I know when if and when, that it's just a part of the disease, and
It
it's not
is.
really her. So
Yeah, and there are things you can do, and but
yeah,
what I and what I would say to you and every other caregiver, excuse me, out there, is to make yourself a priority.
oh yeah, yeah,
It's something
agreed.
that so many of us fail to do,
Hmm.
and it is monumentally important because
Yeah.
if you go down in flames,
Mm.
everyone who depends on you for their well-being does also.
Yeah,
So
100%.
it's not being selfish, it's being smart, it's
Yes.
survival. So
Yeah,
please take really
100%.
good care of you.
Yeah. I'm doing it from the first time I talked to you 3 years ago. I'm continuing to do it. So, and
God
I
bless you,
continue to
Kimberly.
tell other caregivers the same, because it is definitely something that, in the time since then, since I started on this journey, that I've met so many people that I know and that I don't know, that have confided in me and say the same thing. That information that or that advice that you shared about taking care of yourself and not feeling guilty about is definitely something that we all need to remember. So every caregiver. So
Yes.
well, that's a wrap up, and I'm going to thank you. I'm going to do a little bit of reminders to everybody that if you found value in what Tracey and I talked about today, please share this episode with someone that you know, a caregiver or a future caregiver, because we're continuing the mission of providing this valuable content and connecting future caregivers and current caregivers with people like Tracey and others that have been there, that are still going through it, that want to share their experiences, because you're only empowered when you have that knowledge, and that also helps your loved one at the same time. So lastly, we are continuing to help caregivers. So if we did raise some money over the holiday, I would say October, all last year. So we are continuing to give out those dollars. If you know someone that needs them, please visit doaswedo.org, or just have them email me directly, kscott@doaswedo.org. And I have to do a quick little thank you. I'm going to remove a thank you to Live Be Communities for their generous donation last month in February. We appreciate you all, the Remy, Glen Oaks, I never pronounced them right, the Bowen, and Two Hopkins, as well as all our other great sponsors that jumped on from the very beginning. I'm a Soap Addict, Salon D, Approved Shield, Spherex, AK Realty, Blue Jay, Nutra, Rich B, Short Productions, and Aesthetic Hustle. I never say that correctly. So I'm working on it.
You did fine.
Yes, thank you. So thank you again so much, Tracey, and everyone. Just remember, ask that question. Are you prepared for when the time comes that if you can't take care of yourself, does your loved one know what to do? Or if it's you, do your children know what to do, or your spouse, do they know what to do? You need to start having that conversation earlier, because it does take a village. It took a village to bring us into the world, and it's going to take a village to, take us out. So remember, thank you again for being here. And remember, be kind, do as we do, and have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.